Ah, Shiatsu, how I love thee. Shall I count the ways? No, just no. But I will try and describe in the next 10 minutes exactly what Shiatsu has done for my life over the last 3 years. So, let's go. Health. Now, this is probably one of the biggest areas that Shiatsu's had an effect on my life. When I first studied Shiatsu, I was in reasonably good health. I was doing kickboxing, I had a good diet, reasonable amount of exercise, but there were a few things that needed ironing out that I really wasn't quite sure of how to go about. So, I went to see a Shiatsu practitioner, and with a few minor dietary changes, swapping salads for soups, having hot things, introducing chilies, ginger, stir fries, all of the problems resolved themselves within a couple of weeks, which was brilliant and what I'd been trying to do for ages without any success. There have been a couple of times over the years in which I haven't been able to train as much as I would have liked. For example, when I had a kickboxing injury in my leg, I wasn't able to exercise and cycle as much as I'd like to. And I found myself slipping back into old patterns, particularly the ones where I just sit around stuffing my face full of cakes and biscuits and feeling sorry for myself. So recognising that and making those changes to improve myself and to get back on track were particularly useful during those times in which I wasn't able to be physically present in my everyday life. Probably the biggest area of health for me personally was giving up smoking. Cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes. Now, I used to smoke quite a lot, about 40 a day or so, and I'd been trying to give up for years with varying degrees of success. Now, during the first year of my Shiatsu course, I exhibited symptoms of all the weekends that we were studying. So it was no real surprise when I got bronchitis during the lung and large intestine weekend. However, I did take the opportunity, since I couldn't breathe for several days anyway, of giving up smoking. Now, I have slipped a few times since. But with the use of Subos and various Shiatsu recommendations, it's been easier each time. And now I feel finally, and this was 9 months ago and I haven't had a cigarette since, that I've given up for good. Even when I do have occasional cravings, I find that the use of certain points, or of course having some lovely Shiatsu, has helped me to keep on with the good work and not smoke anymore. So, thumbs up to Shiatsu. I also notice interesting things, like for example when I feel quite hot, perhaps my gums are hot or I get flushed and things, some sort of heat pattern. I try and cool down or eat cool foods or try to do things that release heat, use certain points of releasing heat, clearing heat, that sort of thing. So the theory work is actually really useful, not just for pointing out for clients, but for my own self as well. That way regulating my own body and my needs and doing exactly what is best for me at the time. Since improving my lifestyle and having regular Shiatsu and looking after myself key-wise, I don't get ill so often, touch wood. However, on the rare occasions in which I have, I found point work and recommendations have been particularly useful at getting over things a lot quicker, or at least alleviating the symptoms so that it's not quite so bad. And of course, Shiatsu is brilliant for releasing old patterns of behaviour. Now, some people claim that I can be sarcastic, to which I usually respond, really? No, you don't say. Realising and recognising certain patterns of behaviour has been particularly useful in diagnosing what I may be going through at the time and also providing advice on how to get through it. For example, recently I found myself quite depressed and low, lacking in motivation, really unable to put one step in front of another, get on with my day and do what needed to be done. And I figured out what was wrong and then adjusted my life accordingly just to make enough of a difference to begin the process, to start the ball rolling and to get myself back into a state of being able to be full of life and able to do what I needed to do. Now, I already had a reasonably good system in place through my Reiki practice, and that involved meditations, energy work, breathing techniques. But I've discovered since doing Shiatsu that I can bring many elements from both traditions and combine them together. In shamanic healing, for example, I've started to incorporate a bit of Shiatsu where needed. For example, if somebody's going on a journey that's providing quite an emotional response, I might gently support their heart meridian or perhaps heart protector while they're undertaking this journey. Even though different disciplines have different techniques and methods and have their own particular flavour, I find that there's less of a boundary and divide than there used to be. One of my favourite things that I've introduced into my life is Qigong. Now, I'm no expert, but I've been practicing the first half of the Shibashi routine, forms 1 to 9, for the last 2.5 years or so. I try to establish a practice of at least 10 minutes a day of Qigong, of breathing work and of meditations. I find it sets me up for the day, and it's really good before any clients arrive to just allow myself that space, even if it's just the Qigong, in order to energize, to center myself and to prepare myself for the treatments ahead. I also find myself being a little bit more flexible with my time nowadays. I set aside time for certain tasks. I have clients in at certain times. I have things to do according to a schedule. However, I allow myself a certain degree of flexibility. So if there's a day in which I'm trying to do something and it just isn't working and I don't have the motivation or I don't really have the energy to do it, then I just leave it. Give myself some rest. Give myself the space to grow into what needs to be done. I can rearrange my schedule, and I'm lucky in that way, in order to be able to do things most effectively at the best time. And I feel this is because there's a deeper connection with my own ki and my own needs and wrapping that into my schedule of work. I love giving recommendations to clients because it gives them something to work on between treatments, and it allows them to see that there are changes they can make within their own lives that aren't just affected simply by a treatment. So there's certain things they can do, perhaps dietary changes, lifestyle changes, even simple exercises that will allow them to take control of their own health and their own journey back to well-being. I also like to be accessible to my clients as well. I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, I have email, I have telephone numbers, etc., etc. So physically, there is a direct way of contacting me almost at any time. Although people have been warned, if they phone me at 3 o'clock in the morning, they may not get a civil response. But it's so much more than that. I found myself creating workshops or social occasions in which I can engage more with people, perhaps teach them a few things about what I've learned, and in return receive a few lessons about what they've learned. It's that sharing process, and if a client needs something in particular, say for example I feel that they could benefit from Qigong or Tai Chi, I'll either recommend them to a friend or invite them along to a session in which we engage with things in such a way. One of the biggest ways in which my own teaching has been affected by what I've learned over these years is providing more space for people. Whereas before I was content to cram things into a tight schedule so that people felt there was value for money in having things so intensely, now I see the value of allowing space. For example, tomorrow I'm teaching a shamanic practitioner course, and we're exploring the 4 elements of earth, air, fire and water. Sorry 5 elements, I love you dearly, but tomorrow I'm playing with the foursome. However, I've decided to extend this to an entire day. We're going to spend hours walking through woods and playing by the seaside and looking at the clouds in the air, and then having a fire ceremony and creating this sacred space for ourselves, extending the whole thing to an entire day's worth of spacious exploration. Receiving Shiatsu is amazing. Not only do we have to do it, but we actually want to do it. Every weekend I look forward to receiving some Shiatsu, to giving some Shiatsu, to engaging with that entire process. But having the treatments as part of the course from an MRSS practitioner is really useful, because even though there's the temptation during the process of trying to figure out which meridians they're working on, what particular techniques they're using, It also allows you to step back and to let somebody else with an objective viewpoint on your own health and well-being lead you into where you need to be. Now, I had a treatment last year with Annie, and during it she was inspired by a phrase, "Leap and the net will appear." It was the perfect phrase for the situation I was in, and I've even printed it out and kept it in my wallet, and it stayed with me this entire time and continues to promote the qualities of energy that I need to have in my life. So, can I summarize my journey of Shiatsu, the 3 years so far and the future? Well, it's difficult to do so because it's been so massive, so expansive, but it's also fitted so neatly into my life that I can't seem to see the boundaries between where it begins, where it ends, and when other areas of my life coexist with it. So what does the future hold? I can't wait to see.